What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. But before we get all into the topic for today, I would love it if you did a few things. Hit the like button, subscribe button, share button, and bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you are finished, I would love it if you left me a comment below. That way I can get back to whatever it is that you had to say about this topic. For today's topic, I want to give you all my quick thoughts on the first season of the Cross TV show. And I'm going to go into how I noticed that there are a lot of tropes in this show because we really need to discuss this. So let's get into it. For those of you all who do not know, the Cross TV show came out recently on Amazon Prime Video. And this is a thriller that is about a detective in DC who is trying to uncover different murder mysteries, specifically with a mass murderer who has killed a bunch of people by taking random civilians and then turning them into well-known mass murderers and then trying to mimic their death. So essentially, he's trying to take somebody who either looks like someone who was a mass murderer that he knows, that he's read about, or somebody who he can mold into looking like that mass murderer, and then capturing them, torturing them, turning them into that individual as closely as possible, and then killing them in the same fashion that they also were killed. And this show, starring Aldous Hodge, by the way, is based on a book series, if you all did not know. Now, when I watched it, this is one thing that I want to say. This show, to me, was good. I thought the story was very good. Do I think that it was as good as people were saying that it was? No. But do I think that it was good? Yes. Everybody was ranting and raving about how this show was the best thing on television. It was great. It was superb. It was this, it was that. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I feel differently and what I think is really going on. The first reason why I did not think that this show was great, I just thought it was good, was because although the story was pretty good and it was consistent and there weren't a lot of holes in the story, there were a lot of tropes, and they based their story around the tropes that they created. And a lot of people, when they watch these different television shows, aren't really noticing the tropes. Now, some of us might, especially us in new black media, we're probably going to see some of the tropes that are going on in this television show, specifically in this season. But a lot of people are not seeing that. Another thing that I think is happening is, I think that we're television, movie, and media starved overall. What I mean by that is, it's not very often that we see a lot of great black shows or shows where you have a black protagonist. And because we're starved a bit, when we see anything that is just remotely good, we rant and rave about how it's the best thing smoking because we're used to seeing the Tyler Perry quality things and, you know, shows that kind of have that similar aesthetic where the story really isn't all that great, but it caters to a certain audience of simpletons who are just cool with, you know, what they're seeing. You always get these simple-minded Negroes who are cool with seeing the Tyler Perry-esque type of films. And they're cool with seeing these different depictions of black people who, you know, it makes it seem like it's a pro-black show because you see a lot of black characters and a lot of black actors and actresses in it. But then the quality just suffers and they just watch it anyway. You see a lot of that. But this was a show where it felt like the story was really taken up a notch. They really took their time with telling it properly. And in a way, again, that is very consistent. So I think that's why a lot of people like it. But the reason why I thought the story was good, but overall it was just okay, is because the tropes were just really heavy in this show. And at certain times, I had a hard time getting jiggy with it. And I'll be honest with you, the more I watched it, the more I saw the tropes and the more I started becoming annoyed by this television show instead of being able to just enjoy the story. The main trope that I saw as a recurring theme throughout this season of the Cross television show is the controlled opposition trope. For those of you all who do not know what that is, I actually discussed this in a video a while back, but the controlled opposition trope is when a television show, movie, or some piece of media portrays this image of black empowerment, or at least the aesthetic of black empowerment in some way. And there are generally certain ways, like a pattern of what they typically do when they portray this image of controlled opposition. And usually it's one of two things. Either you have a black woman who is at the forefront of black empowerment, or you have a black man who is either effeminate or gay who is at the forefront of black empowerment. But it is usually only one of these two images. And they usually are very pro-black. They usually are talking about something related to empowering black people, or they just know their history very well. There's some aesthetic that they present that shows that they are an empowered black person and they are trying to empower black society. But usually they do things in the background that most people do not notice that show that this is controlled opposition. One of the things that they do is that, and I somewhat mentioned it already, is that they make the character gay or a lesbian. And if they don't make that character gay or a lesbian, they make that character in a relationship with someone who is white. So whether that's a black man who's with a white girl or a black woman who is with a white boy, they put them with someone who is white. The other thing that they typically do is that they make the black man the villain, when the whole idea of portraying this controlled opposition narrative is to show that the white supremacist is the one who is causing issues for black people. And in this show, they did this for the most part, but they took a slightly different spin with it. But there were a lot of things at the forefront that were pretty much the same. In the first episode, they presented a character named Amir Goodspeed. Amir Goodspeed is, or was, a black man who was also an ex-gang member turned Muslim. And he also was an activist. He was a prominent activist in the community, as a matter of fact. And so, on top of all these things that I just told you, they also made this character gay, which I thought was very odd that they would make him a gay Muslim. I just don't really hear this very much. You know, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I just don't hear that very much. And so they made him this character who was, again, an image of black empowerment, but then he also was in the LGBTQIA plus community. Now, it's interesting because he had a sister in this series, and her name was Malika Goodspeed. And Malika Goodspeed ends up taking up this pro-black mantle to a certain extent in this show after her brother was unalived. And I want to kind of backtrack for a second. I'm not going to get too sidetracked, but I just wanted to make this comment really quick. It's also interesting with the Amir character that he was murdered, or he was unalived in order to mimic a well-known serial killer. So as I said earlier, in this show, they had this mass murderer who wanted to take innocent civilians who either look like well-known serial killers or make them look like well-known serial killers, and then unalive them in the same fashion that happened with the original serial killer. The Amir character was captured by this mass murderer who they were looking for. And he was essentially trying to take Amir and turn him into this well-known serial killer who was fictional to the series, named Maurice Freeman Jr., who really was the Sandman. And what they did was take Amir, shave his head, and then as a last meal, they fed him pork, a chocolate cake, and some other stuff. And this was crucial because Amir was a Muslim, and therefore he did not eat pork, and they made that a central theme with this character. And this was to show that his death wasn't because of what they believed or what was pushed to them to be drug overdose, but more so to actually be homicide. So I'd say all this to say that they were trying to make it a central theme that there have been crimes that have been done to black society that are similar to the things that we actually see in real life, where a black man is blamed for unaliving himself, or a black man is blamed for basically drug overdose or whatever the case may be as to why he lost his life, when a lot of times there is foul play involved, especially when you have this black man who is in the streets, he's in street culture, he's in gang culture, whatever the case may be, or used to be, and he's now a prominent activist. So they were essentially playing the whole there is a conspiracy against the black man role, which is central to the whole controlled opposition narrative. But again, we have to take it back to the fact that the leaders of this pro-black movement are generally people who are either a black man who is either effeminate or gay, or a black woman who is either a lesbian herself or is with a white man. And if she is not with one of those two, she is not with anybody. But the whole premise is that a straight black man is not involved in the picture or leading the charge in any type of way. And that's essentially what they were trying to push in this show with this character. Another thing that they often played in this show was the drapetomania role. For those of you all who do not know what drapetomania is, it was this psychological disease that was created by this scientist during Jim Crow, this white scientist. And he essentially said that it is a mental illness for a black man to want to escape colonization. And they readily played this role over and over again when it comes to black men in different media images. So they like to portray this idea of having a black man who is overly angry or is overly aggressive or whatever the case may be, and they make it seem like this black man is irrational, when a lot of times when they make this black man angry in these different TV shows and movies, he's actually onto something. He's uncovered the truth about somebody. He's actually able to uncover when there's a lot of injustices around him, and everybody else around him continues to invalidate him and the things that he believes and the things that he's trying to do. And they've done this with so many characters in media. Examples of this would be Killmonger. They've done it with Bushmaster and Luke Cage. They've done it with the character James Dokes, who was in Dexter. They continue to do this role, and now they have done it with the Alex Cross character in the TV show Cross. Cross was essentially the angry Negro throughout the entirety of this. Mind you, it's still questionable as to whether or not Aldous Hodge himself is partially foundational black American or he is fully non-FBA. I'm not exactly sure about that, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because either he is a foundational black American or he is cosplaying a foundational black American. So essentially what I'm getting at is it's more than likely that they're going to try to put this role onto a black American male more than they are anybody else. And Aldous Hodge, by playing the Cross character, is playing a foundational black American male in this role. And you can kind of tell just by who he associates with, who his friend is, and then all this other stuff, and this idea that he has a level of codification to try to figure out some of the atrocities that have happened to black people. Now, with that being said, Cross has been right about generally and literally almost every single thing that he has said in this show. Literally every point that he has made, everything that he suspected, everything that seemed like foul play, he always pointed out and called it out, and he was pretty much almost always right. And I say that to say that every single time that he was onto something and he would get really assertive about whatever it was, here comes somebody saying, you need therapy, you need therapy, you need therapy, because the constant theme that they had in this show was telling him about how he needed to get over his wife, or at least the death of his wife. And they do this a lot of times with black men, where when they are onto something, when they're able to uncover things, they try to make it seem like this person is overly aggressive and they're letting their emotions get the best of them. And what they'll sometimes do is they'll make him beyond belief I think I told you all about this. There's a beyond belief agenda that goes on with black men where, you know, a lot of the things that they say and do and that they bring up are correct, but then they may add a layer of something that just seems nonsensical, and they'll make their character do that so that you are more than likely to understand the agenda that they put out there. So for example, with the Cross character, they had it where he beat a random civilian when he found out that his wife was just killed just randomly. And so they tried to, you know, harp on the idea that he would just go and he would beat a random civilian after his wife was murdered and unalived. And here's the thing. Foundational black American men typically don't behave in that way. So it was actually out of our character that we would go and just beat a random civilian and who we suspect is somebody who would have did something to one of our loved ones. The point that I'm trying to make with all of this is that they used that thing to try to make it seem like, well, there's a layer where he was wrong and we're going to hold on to that. And they literally did that the entire series. And any other thing that he did, any little action, any little mistake that he made, they overly held him accountable for every single thing that he did. And this was just going on and on and on. The thing about Drapetomania is that they make it so that the black man's point about trying to either escape or trying to point out colonization is not as important as this idea that he is mentally ill. And in the case of an angry Negro that they try to portray in media, that would be him showing his anger, him showing his assertiveness, him being aggressive. That is seen as the mental illness that needs to be cured. It's almost as if that supersedes the points that they're making. They're so focused on this black man being angry and needing to be tamed that they are trying to make it so that the tackling his anger and taming him is more important than the points he's making about white supremacy or the points that he's making about some type of injustice that's going on. And they like to do this thing with black men, and I've seen this quite a bit. I've seen this especially in Luke Cage, the second season, where they like to sun a black man. What I mean by that is they love to say, you know what, we're going to sit there, we're going to stomp down this black man over and over and over again. We're going to browbeat every little thing he does. Anytime he does something, even if it's minor, we're going to tell him about how fucked up he was for doing this little minor thing. You need to go to therapy because you did this. You need to go to therapy because you did that. You need to go to therapy because of this other thing. So they love to do this throughout this TV show. And I just need to say something really quick. One thing that I really got tired of with this television show is how many damn times they had this Negro apologizing. He apologized for every little thing. Oh, I'm sorry that I yelled. Oh, I'm sorry that I stepped the wrong way. Oh, I'm sorry I ate the banana instead of the apple. Like literally every fucking thing that this dude was doing, he was apologizing for. I'm like, good grief. This dude was apologizing for everybody, to everybody. Oh my God, it was annoying. It was almost to the point where sometimes when he was apologizing, I'm like, this is too much. Like even for example, when he somewhat raised his voice to his kid when he was in school, he was apologizing. And I'm looking like, I guess, yeah, he could have said it differently, but it's intense the amount of times that they made this man apologize, and it was draining. It was so draining. It was annoying. Like I get the whole idea of being an accountable parent. I get the idea of being a little bit more gentle than what you were before, or what we've seen from the previous generations. I totally understand that. But it was just way too much. I really want to go back and watch the show and see how many times this brother apologized. Every little thing that this nigga did, he had to apologize for. And I was just like, give me a fucking break. I see these shea butter sambas on these shows doing all types of reckless shit, and they never apologize. They literally never, if anything, they make them double down on the shit that they do. But it's not until a black man does something very minor that they're making them apologize for that little thing that they did. It is very frustrating. And to be honest, as a black man, it's triggering because they do this so much in real life as well too. Like anything you do, somebody wants to hold you accountable for it. But then you do a bunch of bullshit and nobody can say nothing to you, especially if you're a shea butter samba. Especially if you were a shea butter mama. If you were an older black woman, oh my God, you can get away with murder almost. And then another thing that they kept pushing over and over and over again was this thing about go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. And then trying to tell this Negro how and when he was supposed to get over his wife's death. I wish somebody would tell me that I need to get over my wife's death and when I need to do it. I wish that they would. It's almost like in this TV show, they were trying to do this thing where they were like, you know, you can do your job, Negro, but you can't get out of line. You can't get angry. You need to be a good Negro. The good Negroes are the ones who get praised in society. Negroes like you get browbeat with therapy all the time. You need to go to therapy if you can't keep your emotions in check. But you can take all of our bullshit. So what they're essentially trying to say, and the message they're trying to send is that black men can take all of people's sassiness, their lack of boundaries, their invasion of this black man's boundaries, their bullshit, as I said before, but they can't get mad, they can't snap, and if they are, they need to go to therapy. I can't just be a good friend or a good family member who just listens to whatever it is that you have to say or what's on your chest, and you certainly can't hold me accountable. That is the message that they're trying to send, and that's why they kept doing what they were doing across over and over again. And I'll tell you one thing. I'll be damned if somebody tell me when and how I'm supposed to get over the unaliving of my spouse. I will be damned if somebody do that over and over again to me and I call them friend or call them family, because you don't get to decide that. And that's one thing I didn't like about this show, is that they continue to just do the sunning, like I said, because even when he would say something, anytime somebody would counter whatever he would say, it typically was some response about how he needed to go and he needed to seek help. And I noticed that every time they would say that, he would never have a rebuttal. And the reason why is because they wanted to let you all know that everybody else was right about making this message. They were trying to send the message that the right thing here is that this person is putting this black man in his place by saying he needs to go to therapy. So by him not responding and saying anything back, or if he said something back, it was an insult or it was a "you're not my friend anymore" type of statement, then, or some type of random outburst, then that was a proof that this person was just keeping it real and they were telling the truth. And they did that over and over again, because they did that with his so-called friend, and they also did it with his nana. Now let me tell you something about that nana. I told you all, the shea butter mama trope is a bitch, and they pulled it here as well too. The thing about the shea butter mamas is that they are the reason why shea butter sambas exist. So when you all go around talking about black women do this, black women do that, black women are overly sassy, the modern black woman ain't shit, all this other stuff, who do you think created that woman that you see? It's the shea butter mama. Some of you are listening to me and either think it's funny or you're irritated that I'm talking about my elders, but I'm telling you the truth about something that I typically see that nobody wants to call out, and some people don't even really notice for real. They often put this mama, this older black woman, in these types of shows to make it seem like they're some type of individual who has a bunch of wisdom, and they can impart that onto one of the characters, and specifically in this case, a black male character. And oftentimes, one thing that I notice is that these black female characters, these older black women who are really shea butter mamas, are really just big nuisances. You know, they are, again, pushing the agendas that I had just said. I mean, in this show, you had the nana who was talking about him going to see someone over and over and over again. But usually these women are unfeminine. They're not really super loving. They're pushy. And they don't respect boundaries. And one of the things that I noticed even in this show is that she did not respect Cross's boundaries whenever he would say certain things. And that was both professionally and in his personal life. In his personal life, when he basically had set the tone for his son, saying that he was supposed to be going to Philadelphia to do something for work, and his son couldn't come with him because he was in trouble or whatever the case may be. And she said, no, he needs to come with you. She was out of line for that, because that is his son. He is the person who is supposed to make rules for his son. And when she undermines that, the son thinks it's okay to kind of go against that. I'm not saying that his son did that in the show. I'm just saying that's how it works in real life. The second thing is she was trying to get in his business when it came to what he was doing for work and what was going on with him as a detective. She was not supposed to be in that. This is what I mean by they have poor boundaries. They feel that because I'm Nana, because I'm Mama, because I raised you, because I birthed you, that means that I can do whatever I want. So if that means that I can come in between what's going on with you and your job, if that means that I can kind of impede your personal boundaries with your son, your daughter, if that means that I can pull wrinkle what's going on with you and your significant other, then I can do that shit because I'm Mama and you can't get mad at me for it. Charge it to my heart, don't charge it to my mind, which is some bullshit. And that's how they behave. And they did this in this show as well too. The last person that I want to speak about, because I couldn't stand this Negro, was John Sampson. He was my least favorite character on this show. And I was like, man, he is, not only is he the worst friend ever, this Negro is a butter biscuit eating Sambo. And it is not even funny. I mean, think about it. One part that showed me that he was a Sambo was when the Malika Goodspeed character, so going back to that whole revolutionary thing, was marching outside of that courthouse, and she was talking about the death of her brother and wanted to seek justice there. And I'm going to paraphrase on what I'm saying, so don't start acting real bitchy in the comments about me not saying the thing I need to say or saying exactly what was said. But what ended up happening was there was a conversation between Malika Goodspeed and John Sampson, and during that conversation she brought up how there needed to be justice when it came to her brother's death. And there was this clear sign of tension between her and the police officers, especially Sampson. And one of the things that she brought up was that, do you not believe that there is a system of white supremacy that is oppressing black people? And then John Sampson responded and he said, of course I believe that, but I believe a lot of times we are our own worst enemy. That was some bootstrap shit. That was some black on black crime shit. That is shit that Sambo say when they are trying to give black people accountability because they are too afraid to call out racism. And Sampson was always kind of that, in my opinion, fearful Sambo type of character who would go along with things. He didn't challenge a lot of people. And he was essentially a bad partner because he had, in my opinion, contradictory values and beliefs to people such as Cross and, such as some of the individuals who he was trying to defend, like, for example, Amir. Now, the reason why I did not like that is because he reminded me of, the reason why I didn't like his character is because he did so many things that showed that he wasn't really about black empowerment whatsoever. I have no reason to like a character that is going to be that finger wagger. Another way you could tell that they were trying to create a controlled opposition narrative in this TV show is because they had it where the mass murderer, whose name was Ramsey, was a white supremacist who was rich and entitled and all this other stuff, because they tend to go with this almost this rich, wealthy white supremacist as an individual who is a moniker for white supremacy. And they had it where he had for his birthday, he had these black people who were singing and performing for him, and I think a lot of them were non-FBA. And it's weird because Cross's girlfriend, or his lady friend, whatever you want to call her, was, I think the actual actress was non-FBA, and in the show she was also non-FBA as well too. But it was almost as if she was trying to beg the dominant society for different opportunities, for funding opportunities and things like that. So they were showing this dynamic that a lot of them who were non-FBA will go to the dominant society and beg them for certain opportunities for money, etc., and all this other stuff. So they were trying to play that role where there's an all-oppressive system that was started by the white supremacists, and that is run by the white supremacists, and there are black people who were victims of it. So they also were trying to show you that there was that type of dynamic as well too. And I know it's too early to tell when it comes to the John Samson character, but he kind of seems like he may have simp tendencies as well too. Again, I don't have any clear indication that this is a thing, but I have a few things that make me feel like this could be a possibility. One of the things that I noticed about this character is that he would push this whole therapy thing on Cross over and over and over again, like the rest of the characters. But it seemed like he was doing it in addition to Nana doing it, and Nana raised both of them. And I noticed this about some brothers as well too. A lot of brothers have this thing where they fall into one of two simp categories. And I'm going to name these something temporarily just to kind of give it a characterization, but I may change the name later, so don't get attached to it. I just want you to understand what I'm trying to convey. You have some simps who are almost, overshowerers. You have these simps who, they either if a woman who they're dating is behaving badly, or she's just being herself, they overshower them with gifts, compliments, kind acts, and all this other stuff to the point where it's just too much. And then you have a different type of simp who they may be somewhat of a Captain Save-A-Ho. And when they're a Captain Save-A-Ho, it may or may not be by somebody who you're in a relationship with. It could be just that this woman is a motherly figure, or this woman, because she's a woman, you're just doing something kind for her, or that's the aesthetic you're trying to give. But you have this simp who sometimes, when there is something that a woman does to a man, and if the man reacts, or if they believe that woman is right in the way that they criticize that man, they'll double down and do the same thing, and they'll beat down on the dude. And they never will challenge or go against that woman who criticized or beat down on that initial dude. They'll just assist, almost like a henchman. And so Samson seems like he's that second type, just by the way he behaves, the things that he says, the way he acts and stuff like that. I don't have any direct evidence of it right now, but I just get that feeling that he is that type of dude just by his behavior alone. And I see that quite a bit, because they usually have this big old jolly Negro who's usually a Sambo as well too, and all this other stuff, and then they're beating down on black dudes because other black dudes because of something that a woman said that they're trying to perpetuate as right. And they try to make a statement by making an example out of that black dude. So I feel like he kind of has those types of tendencies. But again, I don't really know. All right, y'all, that's all I had to say for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed what I had to say, and I'll definitely have more to come. So make sure that you stay tuned. Other than that, I will talk to y'all later. Peace.